Welcome back to The Truth with Trinity, and I am your host, Trinity. And if this is your first time tuning into the podcast, I want to send you a warm welcome. Here, I talk about issues that happen within the Black community, hopefully for some type of resolution or at least some food for thought to go about your daily way. So, without further ado, I'd like to jump right into this episode's topic, which is narcissism and the correlation to white supremacy. So, I would first like to talk about the origins of narcissism. So, this is a Greek mythological character named Narcissus who was so in love with himself that anyone who tried to care for him or love him, he showed them contempt and hate. So, I'm going to make a small disclaimer. If there are any white people listening into this podcast, if this shoe does not fit, then don't try to wear it. But I'm not going to act oblivious that there is a problem between white people and black people and the way they carry on about their white supremacy, aka privilege. Okay, so now that I've said that, let me continue. So, there are 9 different traits, main major traits of narcissism, and they pretty much can refer to anybody, no matter what color they are. But for the purposes of this episode, I'm referring it to white supremacy, so that's what this is going to be about. So I want to go over characteristic number 1, grandiosity. This is an unrealistic, and I'm going to say that again, unrealistic view of oneself that they are bigger than life and better than everyone else. So, when we look at white supremacy, we look at white privilege, they won't say it. They'll deny it like, oh, you're crazy. There's something wrong with you. You only have low self-esteem. But yet, this is what they're portraying out to the world as far as bragging about white supremacy. And I want to do another podcast as to what exactly is white privilege and what does that give them the privilege to do. But anywho, so that's the first trait right there. So they feel like they're better than anyone else. They're bigger than anyone else. And so that's pretty much it on that one. Number 2, they're arrogant and domineering. They know more than everyone else. You'll hear through statistics and, news reporters, when you study as far as black people versus white people and white people versus everyone in the world, that they're more intelligent than anyone else. And like I said, it always bothers me when they say that about black people, because they got most of their inventions and medicine and knowledge from black people, Egyptians, Native Americans, and things of that nature, agriculture, so before they even knew what they knew and how they knew what to do, they got it from other people and they exploited that and took it as their own and put their own patent on there. So, and then, like I said, once again, we can, white people can point out, how black people are as a whole now, but it's only because, their civilization was taken, robbed, and removed from them. And if you take that civilization away from anyone, of course they're going to act unlike themselves. So, to say that they're smarter than everyone else naturally, you give anyone a book, a piece of paper, and a teacher, the proper teacher, they can be just as intelligent, if not more. So, that's one of the things with the characteristic of narcissism, that they feel like they're smarter than everyone else, and they make those statistics stacked against other races of people to inflate themselves to believe that they are smarter than everyone else. So the third one is lack of empathy. So this is the third trait of how narcissism correlates with white supremacy. Lack of empathy and inability to care about the feelings of others or put themselves in someone else's shoes. Doesn't that sound familiar? With all these killings that's going on. And you'll hear and you'll see white people in the comments saying, oh, they should have been following the law. They should have been doing this. When if it was their child, if it was them on trial, they would have a whole different story. As a matter of fact, those rules wouldn't even apply to them. They wouldn't be talking about laws and being jailed and fined or any of that when it comes to their white families and their white children and their white husbands. It's a whole different ball game. And I want to say this too, with white people, they want to be judged by their own peers. So they can't step outside of themselves to look at anyone else, as long as if they're not white. How would white people feel if they were on trial in front of majority black judges and black where are those jurors? What if they and black lawyers? What if they had to fight for their life in front of all black people, majority with only one white person in there or something like that? They can't see that. They cannot, they refuse to see the difference of what if there was black cops that said, hey, we couldn't manage your white son and we're just going to kill him. We felt afraid for our life. Well, if you're that afraid, why are you on the police force? Yeah, they can't see anything other than their own white life. They cannot, they refuse to. It's not that they can't, they just refuse to. They don't want to. And it's time for black people to wake up to see that they don't care about anyone else's life other than their own, white families and white constituents' lives. So we need to stop asking the question as black people, why don't they care? It's because they refuse to care, don't want to care. Even with an example of Roy Chip. So this is a guy that's, a politician that's made some type of comment just in the last 24 hours or so about Asians and about, he made a reference to a rope and hanging people. And like he said, he refused to apologize. I can at least respect him on that because at least he's keeping it real. He's racist and he doesn't care, and I wish more white people would come out with it, because the first step to acknowledging that you have a problem is to at least acknowledge, to get help. So the first step to getting help is to acknowledge that you have a problem. Not to say that he thinks he has a problem, but my point is, a lot of white people will say, oh, I don't feel that way. It's crazy. You're racist for even saying, anything about this issue. And yet and still they're, participating in on these acts and making these comments like it's innocent and like no one's supposed to spread light on this sickness that a lot of them tend to have. Because, I was looking in the YouTube comments about Roy Chip and the interview that he had, and there were white people saying, oh no, that's not racist. That was a style of execution, which is true. That was a style of execution, but why would he make that in reference to a sensitive issue as far as, Asians being killed and perhaps maybe as a hate crime? Like they can't see the error of that. They can't see, they'll justify and twist words to their liking. And that's going back into lack of empathy. As long as it's not their people on the chopping block, they could care less. And they let you know that they could care less about anyone else. So it's time for black people and other maybe racist people to wake up. Like, yes, stop trying to get them to care and realize that this may be a sickness that a lot of Caucasians have, that they just do not care. They refuse to care. I want to go to number 4. Sense of entitlement. They are owed things. They are entitled to anything and everything they want and desire, including taking over the lives of other people. There is no appreciation when people do things for them because they feel they were entitled to it in the first place. So I want to tie that into white supremacy. When you look at the history of Europeans, and them traveling, from Europe and going throughout different continents and civilizations, and, going in, befriending people, feeling like, hey, I can take over your land. I want you to dress like me. I want you to talk like me. I want to, colonization. I want to get you to speak my language. They feel entitled to it. I guess that's in their nature. I'm not sure if this is in the nature of most Caucasians. They feel like you should do like them. You should wear your hair like them. You should wear their Western clothes. They just feel like there's nothing wrong with it. They feel entitled. And if you have it, and if your culture or civilization has something that they want, they feel entitled to it and will kill you for it. And that's some deep stuff right there. When we look at, even how our civilization was taken, how it baffles me how, they went over to a place like Africa and, colonized it and have the nerve to say that black people don't come from Africa. Like the first people When you talk about the great things and the great inventions and the civilization that once was in Africa, they're trying to say that they weren't black, but they're the first people to say to take your black butt back to Africa. Well, that's their way of basically saying that you don't come from anything great, and whatever great that came from Africa, it wasn't you. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. If black people come from Africa and our origins are from Africa or Hebrew or whatever, and they're saying that, go back to Africa, but when you talk about the great, accomplishments and the great civilization that Africa once was, they'll say, oh, they're not black. Like, that's just hocus pocus. That's word salad. So that's that sense of entitlement, and not just Africa. When you look at America, the fact that it belonged to someone else, and they'll say, oh, well, they were savage. They needed to be civilized. Well, what made you determine, what gave you the entitlement to feel like someone needed to change their way of life just because you thought that what they were living like was something other than what they should have lived like? So that's that entitlement. I have to have what you have. I have to have the land that you have, and how, people have their own cultures and way of doing things, that they didn't have. They feel like they should be entitled to the way you do things. So, with Native Americans, tapestry and, even agriculture, even with black people, and a lot of things, the gold that we had, the diamonds that we had, and I looked, I study a lot. I study European history as well. And, when you look back at Europeans and their rulership back in the 1300s and whatnot, you'll notice that their kings and queens didn't have any rubies or jewels. They had like plated type of metal crowns and whatnot. But after they conquered Africa, they had jewels. You started to see them in jewels in the late 1500s because they had conquested Africa. So those were black people's jewels, and they felt entitled to it, at any cost of anyone else, and they still continue to do it to other people's countries. Arabia, India. So this is some type of illness that clearly I don't know if there's ever a cure to. But I want to jump on to number 5. Requires excessive admiration. They want to be admired and paid attention to all the time. They have no tolerance for anyone else being in the spotlight. So I wanted to tie that into white supremacy. So the excessive admiration. Okay, so they'll say when you try to bring up, black people's success and what once was, or even now, things that black people do and they achieve, they have no tolerance for that. They don't want to hear that. They don't want that portrayed in the media because they want only positive things portrayed, to Caucasians in the media. They've put a big shadow on any black children or any black men that are successful, any black men and women that are successful. They always want to amplify them being crooks and criminals. Even the roles that, are played out in Hollywood, you very rarely see a black woman being portrayed as a princess or a woman of class and dignity, as to say there are no black women that have class. And then you hardly see black men other than homosexual characters and a strong male character. You only see, white figures, even though they're what's the word? They're fictitious, fictional, but superheroes. You don't see very many black men portrayed as that, as to say that there are no black men that are strong that can be heroes and save the day. They only want to portray themselves in this light, and and they don't have any room for anyone else to be in that spotlight but them. And that goes through life, even on the job, workforce, everywhere in this country. It's like, there's no room for seeing you other than being a criminal. And to say that black people are criminals, and that's just who black people are. And the news reality is, the news flash, the reality check is, I am very troubled with hearing, Europeans pass down to their children and just keep portraying that black people are criminals, and that's just, what they do, when that's what you guys do. I mean, didn't you steal other people's continents? Didn't you rob and kill? Aren't you still doing that till today? You're killing and killing people, genocide. You've robbed other people's, not just money out of pocketbooks, for little felony charges. I mean, you're committing crimes and charges against millions of people. You have in the past, and you continue to do so today with no sweat on your forehead. So it troubles me to hear that black people are just naturally criminals, when I think that's narcissistically projection upon who they really are, and what they really represent. Number 6, exploitative. They will take advantage of other people for their own best interests. They will take more than they give, refuse to pay people for their services in a fair way, if at all, and use people up until there is nothing left of them. Doesn't that sound a little familiar when we're talking about reparations? You have a small percentage of, Caucasians that'll say, hey, maybe they deserve a little something for their slave labor. But, don't they have welfare? Don't they have the pennies and crumbs? So, so there's a problem with that. I find it troubling because, Jewish people and other, ethnicities of people, but definitely Jewish people, they were paid for the Holocaust. And they can bring up Holocaust, they can bring up, remember the Holocaust, and they, profited off of that. And they're able to live their lives and better lives for their people. But it's something about black people. They try to say, oh, we don't know who's actually from Africa, descendants from Africa. No, you know exactly who. We're the descendants over here. So there are other blacks that come from, other countries that come over here now, but you know exactly who the descendants of slaves are over in this country. And so they use that as an excuse that we can't tell who's who. That's why we can't do any reparations. Then it's this whole 40 acres and a mule. So after we, were freed, the slave master promised this 40 acres and a mule, which they knew was never going to happen. And free labor, and a lot, when you challenge a lot of white people on this, they'll say, my people wasn't the people that benefited off of slavery. We don't have any money. Our grandparents, don't have any money from slavery, when that's a lie. Majority of the white people that come from this country or migrated over to this country around that time benefited and profited off of slave labor, whether it was cotton or inventions from black people that they signed their name to and became rich off of, however they want to name it, and all the free labor and pain that black people went through, they profited off of it. And they are well off because of that. And when you hear Caucasians talk about welfare, it's just interesting because welfare was first designed for the white woman and her leaving an abusive relationship with a white man. There were no black people that could be on welfare at first, when it first was designed, and to see black people on it now, some black people, and then, the truth is there's more white people on welfare than there are black people, and the disadvantage that still exists in the financial gap between white people and black people. They'll act like it's because black people just want to be poor. No, let's take you away from what you have and enslave you for 400 years and see how far off you are and see how well off you are, So, they're exploitative. They don't want to pay us for our services. And a lot of times when we get education and we get college degrees, so even the American dream. So a lot of times when African American men and women, they go to school, they still don't want to give you the job a lot of times. And even if you do get the job, they still want to treat you less than on the job. So this type of inferior, superior type of relationship, which I want to do another podcast on Europeans, do they still feel like they own us? So that's a whole nother episode. But yeah, so that's the exploitive nature that, a lot of Caucasians exhibit, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. And I want to talk about the last one, number 7, envious of others. They are resentful when other people have things that they feel entitled to. They become angry when they see that other people have things that they do not have. And I wanted to name a couple of examples. Our hair as black people. They'll say, oh, we don't care about your hair. It can be whatever it's going to be. But you have such a problem in the workplace. As long as the hair is clean, okay, as long as it's clean and it's well kept, why do you feel like you have to make a big deal about, let me touch your hair? Well, let me touch your hair. It's stringy. It's straight. Like, why does my hair have to be ugly just because you can't have it? And they'll say, well, we don't want your hair. Then why do you make such a big deal about it? Why do you always make a big deal about it when we go out? Why does it have to be permed? So that goes back into everything has to be like them and their way. So if they can't have it, they want to destroy it. If they can't take it, because it's something that's a part of who you are and your essence, they want to destroy it. They want to downplay it. So they're okay with talking about their history. And you see it on TV, you see it everywhere, it's celebrated. Then they get mad when you have black history. And you hear, some Caucasians say, well, why do they have black history? We don't have white history. Well, the reason why is because it's celebrated 365 days a year, whether people want to celebrate it or not. When they walk outside, when they look at mannequins in stores, when they watch TV, it's bombarded on everyone that's non-white to celebrate white people. Okay, so that's why there's black history. A Black History Month. Our skin color. A lot of them say, I don't want to be dark. I don't want to be, I don't want to be dark or whatever. But, I question that. Why would you get a tan if you don't want to be darker? Why would you get a tan? Why would you go out for a tan if you don't have a problem, with black people's skin color? You hate black. You don't want to be black, but you go out and catch a tan. But since you can't have the brown skin, the melanin skin, you want to hate on it, call it ugly. It's ugly. It's less desirable, when that's furthest from the truth. The true beauty and the first, origin of beauty comes from black women. So it's just interesting. And I say that because, the first humans, they derived from Africa, the human gene. Okay. And so if that's the case, that means a lot of things that existed, before white people even existed or came on the scene, kings and queens come from black people, but they don't want to say anything about that, because they feel like it's diminishing their lives. The land that was stolen, we've already talked about that, but since they couldn't, they felt entitled to it, so they felt the need to take it. And I wanted to make it clear, I don't really believe it's because Caucasians were that much smarter than other races of people why they took the land. It's just that other humans had the ability to love, trust, and care for others, and there's that exploitative characteristic. A lot of white people, they don't have that caring, they don't have that care, that human trait of caring for others. So they knew other people cared, and come on and have dinner with us, Thanksgiving, and then next thing you know, they're being killed. The other races of people are being killed and their land being taken over. So they have a high ability to turn off any type of caring and empathetic abilities for anyone else, to be able to overtake and rule other people through through other people's feelings of caring and trying to befriend people. But it's not because they're so much more intelligent than anyone else. So I want to talk about the discovery of narcissism. So this is the last part. They say that narcissism was discovered by a British essayist and physician by the name of Havelock Ellis in 1898. And it's just kind of ironic that this is a British, European man that discovered this, this illness. And the root cause is self-love to the point that no one else exists. So there's nothing wrong with having self-love. And there's nothing wrong with loving your own race, a little more than anyone else's, because that's the race you belong to. But it's a problem when you feel like no one else's feelings or life exists other than the race that you belong to. And the sad part is, not, like I said, not every white person is racist or things of that nature. But the reality is, a lot of them are unconsciously and subconsciously. Some of them know it and they hide it. So it's a mind game. They'll tell other people that are non-white, I don't have a problem with black people or Asian people or any other race of people. But they know behind closed doors, they're laughing about it, they're bragging about it. And then there's that gaslighting. There's that gaslighting thing when they go out in front of other people. Oh, you're crazy, you're racist. And then, white people have created this thing that you're racist because you bring up their racism. So that's deep within itself. Some type of mind game psychosis. So if I'm bringing up the racism that you're doing, that I'm deemed racist just for bringing it up. So that's some type of crazy game right there. And is it safe to say, is this some type of sickness and illness that majority of white people carry in their nature? Or is this passed down heredity wise? I would like to get your thoughts and comments on it. You can. That pretty much wraps up this segment. And can they be cured? Can they be cured? They don't want to be cured. So where's that leave people at? I mean, should we leave white people where they're at? Should we vacate them? Let them have their own land to themselves? I don't know, which is a whole nother episode, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. It's been a pleasure talking with you all. If you have any suggestions, questions, or comments, you can reach me at thetruthwithtrinity.com. Also, to keep the Truth with Trinity rolling on air, you can also make a donation to thetruthwithtrinity.com. Another way that you can donate is by passing the word on to other people and having meaningful conversations and knowledge to enlighten our people. And even other people, even white people, if you're listening, enlighten your own people about the situations as well. So that's pretty much it. And always remember, if you can't tell the truth with anyone else, you can with Trinity. Till next time, take care.